Berlin, January 1945. Above ground, the capital of the Third Reich is coming apart stone by stone. Entire districts are flattened, streets churned into frozen mud by artillery, the sky permanently bruised with smoke. Yet beneath the garden of the Reich Chancellery, far from daylight, a very different world still hums with electric light and whispered commands, a concrete labyrinth built to outlast a regime already in its death throes. What happens in this underground refuge will shape not only the final days of Nazi Germany, but how the world wrestles with the physical remains of evil long after the guns fall silent. And if you realize yet how deliberately that story will be buried, the structure is known as the Führerbunker, though it is actually two bunkers layered together, the older Führerbunker above and the newer, deeper complex below. Completed in early 1944, the lower bunker lies nearly 9 meters beneath the surface, encased in reinforced concrete up to 4 meters thick. It is not grand, corridors are narrow, ceilings low, air heavy with dampness and diesel fumes. Roughly 30 rooms branch off like arteries, conference chambers, a map room, communications hubs, sleeping quarters. This is not a palace, it is a sealed machine, built for survival at a moment when survival was already slipping away. On the 16th of January 1945, Adolf Hitler descends the steps into this underground world for the final time. He is 55 years old, physically diminished, increasingly detached from reality. Alongside him come the remnants of his inner circle, Martin Bormann, the regime's tireless bureaucratic enforcer. Joseph Goebbels, the fanatic propagandist, secretaries such as Trottel Jung, military adjutants and guards who understand, even if they do not say it aloud, that this descent is likely permanent. Above them, Berlin is being encircled. Below them, history is narrowing to a handful of concrete rooms. Life inside the bunker takes on a grotesque sense of routine. Each day brings military briefings, though the armies discussed often exist only as arrows on maps. Orders are issued with absolute certainty to units that have already been destroyed. Telephones ring, typists transcribe decrees. Meals are served on schedule, the walls sweat with moisture as groundwater presses in. The bunker is doing its job, preserving the illusion of control even as that illusion grows thinner by the hour. By late March, Soviet artillery can be heard with unsettling clarity. The sound reverberates through the concrete, a distant but constant thunder. Yet Hitler refuses to leave. The bunker is no longer simply a headquarters. It has become an anchor, a place where reality is filtered, delayed, reshaped. Every report is adjusted to fit belief. Every failure is blamed on betrayal or incompetence elsewhere. And still, the machinery of command continues, grinding forward as if momentum alone might reverse defeat. On the 20th of April 1945, Hitler's 56th birthday, the outside world finally breaks through. Soviet shells begin landing in the Chancellery garden directly above the bunker. For the first time, even those underground cannot pretend the front is far away. A brief, muted celebration is held. Hitler emerges briefly to award medals to teenage members of the Hitler Youth, boys sent to defend a city that no longer has the means or the will to save itself. Then he retreats back below ground, sealing the door behind him. If you're finding this kind of deep, carefully researched storytelling compelling, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. It genuinely helps this kind of historical work reach more people and ensure stories like this are told with nuance rather than spectacle. Inside the bunker, the atmosphere shifts. Conversations grow shorter, tempers fray. The smell of fuel, sweat, and stagnant air becomes inescapable. The structure that was meant to shield its occupants from destruction now traps them with it. Above, Berlin is being pulverized. Below, the regime's final refuge is slowly transforming into something else entirely. Because what no one fully acknowledges yet, but what the concrete walls already know, is that this bunker was never meant to be remembered. And once its final purpose is fulfilled, powerful forces will move quickly to ensure it all but disappears from the surface of history. By the final week of April 1945, the bunker is no longer insulated from the collapse it was built to resist. The walls still stand, the lights still work, but the illusion of command has fractured beyond repair. Soviet forces are now fighting street by street through central Berlin. The Reich Chancellery above is a skeletal ruin, its grand halls shattered, its symbols of power reduced to debris. Underground, the regime's last occupants moved through the corridors with a mixture of denial, ritual, and dread, aware that the end is near, yet uncertain how it will unfold. On the 29th of April 1945, deep in the bunker's cramped confines, Adolf Hitler performs one final act of control. In a brief civil ceremony, witnessed by a handful of loyalists, he marries Eva Braun. The event is quiet, almost surreal. There is no celebration, no music, no future implied. It is an act heavy with symbolism rather than hope and assertion of order in a world that has slipped entirely beyond his grasp. Only hours later, Hitler dictates his political testament, a document steeped in accusation and delusion, blaming generals, Jews, and imagined traitors for a catastrophe he himself unleashed. That same night, the bunker settles into an uneasy stillness. The artillery outside is relentless now, shaking dust from the ceilings. Communications with the outside world collapse one by one. Messages sent to supposed relief forces go unanswered. The maps on the walls once crowded with arrows and counteroffensives are quietly removed. What remains is the stark knowledge that there is no escape and no rescue coming. On the afternoon of the 30th of April 1945, the final act unfolds. Hitler retreats to his private study with Eva Braun. Guards and aides wait outside, listening to the muffled sounds of the bunker ventilation fans, distant explosions, footsteps pacing the corridor. When the door is opened later, both are dead. Hitler has shot himself. Eva Braun has taken poison. The man who ruled Europe through terror ends his life in a small concrete room, far from crowds, speeches, or spectacle. Their bodies are not left below ground. In accordance with Hitler's orders, they are carried up the narrow stairs, through shattered corridors, and into the shell-torn garden above. There, in a shallow shell crater, aides douse the corpses with gasoline and set them alight. Soviet shells fall nearby as flames consume what remains. The scene is chaotic, hurried, and incomplete, a desperate attempt to deny enemies a body, a symbol, a trophy. What is left behind is ash, fragments, and uncertainty that will echo for decades. Death spreads quickly through the bunker. Joseph Goebbels, having sworn loyalty to Hitler until the end, poisons his 6 children with the help of his wife Magda. The couple then take their own lives, their bodies burned in the same ruined garden. Other officers choose suicide. Some attempt to flee through underground tunnels. Others simply wait, paralyzed by the absence of orders they no longer believe in. The bunker, once buzzing with activity, becomes eerily quiet. On the 2nd of May 1945, the last organized resistance in Berlin collapses. Soviet troops overrun the area around the Reich Chancellery. When they finally reach the bunker complex, they do not find a dramatic last stand or a defiant Führer awaiting capture. Instead, they encounter flooded corridors, abandoned rooms, scattered documents, and the unmistakable signs of a regime that ended not in glory, but in disintegration. Yet the bunker itself survives, scarred by explosions, partially submerged, but structurally intact. It remains beneath the rubble, a physical remnant of Nazi power that refuses to vanish. And as Soviet officers begin to grasp what this place represents, a new question emerges, one far more complicated than battlefield victory. Because ending a war is one thing, deciding what to do with the place where its greatest criminal met his end is something else entirely. In the weeks after Berlin's fall, the bunker enters a new phase of existence, no longer a command center, no longer a tomb, but a problem. Soviet officers descend into its flooded corridors with flashlights and notebooks, documenting every room, every doorway, every trace of the final days of Nazi power. This is no act of curiosity, it is an investigation, and its conclusions will be treated not as history, but as state secrets. What the Soviets find here will be tightly controlled because the truth, if mishandled, could become dangerous. Special units of SMERSH, the Soviet Counterintelligence Service, take charge of the site. They photograph Hitler's private study, map the bunker's layout, and collect charred remains from the garden above. Dental fragments are recovered and matched with records from Hitler's dentist. By late May 1945, Soviet authorities are privately certain Hitler is dead. Yet publicly, they say nothing definitive. Stalin himself chooses ambiguity, allowing rumors of escape to circulate. In a world already dividing into hostile camps, uncertainty becomes a political weapon. Meanwhile, the bunker remains physically present, damaged, but stubbornly intact beneath the ruins. And this too is a problem. A structure like this cannot simply be ignored. It risks becoming a pilgrimage site, a magnet for myth, a concrete anchor for dangerous nostalgia. The Soviets understand something crucial. Memory is not only shaped by what is remembered, but by what is allowed to remain visible. So the work of erasure begins. Between 1945 and 1949, the shattered remains of the Reich Chancellery are systematically dismantled. Stone by stone, walls are pulled down, decorative elements are removed or reused. The surface landscape is flattened into an unremarkable wasteland. In December 1947, Soviet engineers attempt something more ambitious: the destruction of the bunker itself. Explosives are placed in key sections, detonations rip through the upper levels, collapsing ceilings and stairways. But the bunker refuses to cooperate. The reinforced lower chambers, built to withstand precisely this kind of force, remain largely intact. Walls crack but do not give way. Water floods in, rubble fills corridors. Complete destruction would require enormous effort for little practical gain, and so the strategy shifts. Rather than obliterate the bunker, authorities choose to bury it literally and politically. By the time the German Democratic Republic is established in 1949, silence has become official policy. East German leaders inherit not only a damaged capital, but a dangerous inheritance beneath it. Their solution is careful omission. Maps quietly remove references to the site. Streets are renamed. The area is redeveloped with no markers, no plaques, no acknowledgement of what lies below. The goal is not confrontation with the past, but insulation from it. If this exploration of how power tries to control memory is resonating with you, consider subscribing and liking the video. It helps more people discover this kind of careful, evidence-based history, especially stories that resist easy answers. Yet even buried, the bunker continues to exert pressure. Construction crews working in the early 1950s report striking impossibly thick concrete underground. Each time, authorities intervene. Openings are sealed, reports are classified. The ground above is smoothed over again. Officially, there is nothing there. Unofficially, everyone involved understands the truth and understands they are not supposed to speak of it. The irony is unavoidable. The very effort to erase the bunker only deepens its myth. In West Germany, where information filters through fragments and rumor, speculation flourishes. Did Hitler really die? Is the bunker still accessible? What secrets remain sealed below? The absence of visible evidence feeds imagination far more effectively than a monument ever could. By the late 1950s, the policy is set. The bunker will not be destroyed, not documented, not acknowledged. It will exist in a state of managed invisibility, a ghost structure beneath a divided city. But concrete, unlike ideology, does not disappear simply because it is inconvenient, and as Berlin continues to rebuild above it, the buried remains of the fort bunker wait quietly until history, once again, changes the rules. For decades, the fort bunker exists in a strange half-life, absent from maps, unmarked in guidebooks, officially non-existent, yet persistently present beneath the streets of Berlin. East German authorities maintain their policy of silence, but the city itself refuses to cooperate. Construction projects in the 1960s and 1970s repeatedly encounter the same obstacle: reinforced concrete walls too thick to be ordinary foundations, corridors that do not match any approved plans. Each discovery triggers the same response: hold work, seal the opening, erase the trace. History once again is pushed back underground. In 1973, during the construction of apartment blocks, workers break directly into parts of the lower bunker. What they find is unsettling: flooded passageways, twisted metal doors, remnants of electrical fittings, all preserved in a kind of damp suspension. The Stasi intervened immediately. The chambers are filled with sand and cement, entombed more thoroughly than before. No photographs are released, no reports are published. The message is clear: some places are not meant to be seen, even decades later. In the West, the bunker becomes something else entirely: a rumor, a negative space in historical understanding. Scholars rely on testimonies, partial Soviet reports, and architectural guesses. Popular culture fills in the gaps with conspiracy and spectacle. The absence of physical access allows fantasy to grow unchecked, reinforcing exactly the kind of distorted fascination East German authorities sought to prevent. Then, in 1989, the rules change. The fall of the Berlin Wall does more than reunite a city. It forces a confrontation with everything that was buried physically and morally. Archives open, restrictions loosen. In 1990, parts of the bunker are rediscovered during redevelopment. Investigators document what remains: submerged rooms, collapsed ceilings, fragments of pipes and wiring. It is no pristine relic, no cinematic ruin, just raw, utilitarian concrete, stripped of symbolism by time and decay. Once again, a decision must be made. Preserve it, destroy it, turn it into a museum? Germany chooses restraint. In 1992, the remains are sealed yet again. No guided tour, no reconstruction, no dramatic unveiling. The fear is not denial, but distortion that any grand presentation risks transforming a site of collapse into a site of fascination. The solution is deliberately modest. In 2006, a small informational panel is installed nearby. It offers facts, diagrams, dates, nothing more. No imagery, no spectacle, no invitation to linger. Today, between 15 and 20% of the bunker's concrete shell is believed to still exist beneath modern Berlin, under parking lots, sidewalks, and residential buildings. People walk over it daily without noticing. That is not an accident. It is policy, shaped by decades of hard-earned lessons about memory and misuse. The Führerbunker story is not one of triumph or mystery, but of management, of how societies choose to live with the physical remains of moral catastrophe. Germany did not erase the bunker completely, nor did it elevate it. Instead, it contained it, acknowledged without reverence, documented without display. The bunker endures as a buried footprint, a reminder that history's darkest structures do not simply vanish when the fighting stops. They persist beneath the surface, in concrete and in conscience, waiting for each generation to decide not whether to remember, but how.